Evening, everybody. I'm here with my friend Jan Vivian, who is an amazing naive art artist. And this evening, I'm going to take a short interview with her. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you this evening. Let's start with the first question. Just if you like to introduce yourself and just tell me a little bit about your background.
My name is Jan Vivian. I'm an artist. I paint in acrylics and I paint naively. I always have. And my background is I worked most of my life as an interior designer and a muralist and used my art as an art director for event dressing. And I could always produce visuals for my clients, which is how I used my art. But 20 years ago, I moved to Cornwall to paint full-time. So I've been a full-time painter for 20 years.
Wow, that's amazing. 20 years. My next question would be, what kind of things inspire you? What motivates you to create art and inspires you to make your paintings?
I think it's always been nature. I've always just been blown away by what I see in nature. And we live in the countryside. We have a wildlife field that we've been creating. And so it's all the things that I see in that field that slowly feed into my painting. But for a long time, it was, I would say for about 40 years of my life, I've painted field systems. So all over the world, there are these field systems, but they are gradually disappearing because it's not a very money-making way to farm, if you like. And so they've been destroyed. But so initially, my work was based on field systems for many years. But as I've gradually started seeing much more nature down here, then the birds came in. And I've travelled a lot. I've lived abroad a lot of my life, and my childhood was in China and Africa.
Oh, wow, so that's amazing.
I think all these things have fed into my imagination.
I did see in the morning a picture of a pheasant that decided to visit your garden. Is he going to appear in one of your paintings, probably?
For sure he is, but he's so beautiful. I look at him and he has this wonderful iridescence. It's lilac. So he has this lilac sheen over the chestnut feather. And I keep looking at him and thinking, how can I possibly reproduce your beauty? But yes, he's amazing.
Oh, amazing. I look forward to seeing his representation. I'm sure you'll find a way because you use such bright colors. There is just such energy in your paintings. It's absolutely amazing to look at.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
My next question is, how important is the quality of the materials you use?
I'm afraid I think it's very important. If I have very large family of, nieces and great nieces and nephews. And whenever I buy them artists' materials, I buy them the very best. It's the only way. So yes, if you can afford it, or you have to be clever. But just a quick story, when I was 5 in South Africa, the next door neighbour gave me 100 wax crayons. I remember this moment. And they were standing up in a box. And there was a silver and a gold crayon.
Amazing.
And that was it. Yes, I was like, that was it. I just want to create pictures with colour.
I can imagine. Such a nice memory to have. My next question would be, which is your signature work?
I think now it's the birds and I've got one behind me that's
beautiful.
Large. I've got bigger and bigger recently, and in fact I really enjoy painting larger. The thing is, we're all worried about the environment. We're all worried about what's going to happen to this beautiful world that we are threatening in every way. And I can see that down in Cornwall, where the farmers, I know they have to make a living, but I see the toll it takes, because lots of birds, for example, down here nest on the ground.
Mm.
Pheasants nest on the ground. And
Yeah.
if it's nesting and the farmer cuts the field as he does in the summer to put winter food for his cattle, the pheasant won't move, they just get killed. So we don't get many pheasants here for that reason, because
No.
they don't usually, the ladies don't survive the summer. But my work is also about, I'm always wondering, what a miracle that we're here. You know, over thousands and thousands of years, when we look at how creatures have evolved. So a lot of the birds' images are based on thoughts of how minor things change in the appearance of the bird, and how at the end of its sort of, at the present moment of my painting, how it has evolved. And I quite often put what people think are bird shadows, but to me they're more like a lineage leading back to once upon a time, you know, how
Yeah.
the birds were 1,000 years ago, or, you know, 50,000 years ago. Yeah, so there's a lot in my paintings, a lot that I worry about, but I don't really want people to pick up on that.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So my paintings are naturally joyful.
They kind of charge you with positive energy.
Yeah, so I think that's just instinct. And I don't start off with a definite, I get obsessed. I've been obsessed for years with field systems, and also with the kind of energy that goes through a land. So sometimes this kind of S shape that I do, you might think it's water, it could be energy. And sometimes I think it's like an Orojo, which is, I first saw them and heard about them in the desert in America. And they are the patterns left by water in the sand.
Oh, wow.
And we see that on the beach here too. The beach is here too. So it's all tied in, you know, different things going on. Sometimes I hide leaves. Sometimes I hide insects. I hide things because I like to do it.
That's amazing. I love that.
Try and put a new layer, you know, so that there's always a discovery within the painting.
That's amazing. I really, really like that. Because it's like those little things that people sometimes don't notice that make it very, very special. Thank you.
Yeah.
My next question is, what would be your advice to an artist who is just starting out?
Well, my advice would be, such a difficult thing that's a difficult question, but it's not an easy path to follow, but you must stay true to yourself. So even if you're being educated, you know, there will be people who will be saying to you, no, you mustn't paint this way, you should paint that way, and this is not right, and for me, I think there are no rules, and that you must, in order to be the best possible artist, I think you have to be congruent with yourself.
Yeah, that's a great advice. And then on the other hand, what is the most valuable advice that you got from somebody else about your art?
Well, there's an artist that I really admire, who's not very well known, but he's a Cornish artist. To me, he's a pure artist. He starts his day by writing titles for his paintings over his breakfast, which annoys his wife, but I think that's wonderful. And then he paints in series, which I hadn't thought of doing. I just kept to my one theme of fields. And once you start to explore a series, it's huge. So, you asked me what advice. He told me that before I started painting a work, I should get rid of all the images in the front of my head. Just put them down on the paper, you know, play a little with the paints and with the images that you have, and allow the true part of what you're painting to come through, which is actually quite an interesting thought, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's an interesting way of developing the painting, actually. Because sometimes I suppose you can be overwhelmed by too many images, and that's a really interesting way of extraction.
And he also, another thing that he used to say to me, which I still remember, you know, when you spent a lot of time on a painting and you're getting it to a point where you think, right, I've turned the corner and it's starting to work. And then you do something, and the next morning you go and look at it and you think, oh, I've ruined it.
Yeah, I get that.
He calls that making and breaking, and he says it's an important part of the creative process. So I hear his voice when I paint.
That's
His
amazing.
name is Russell Hedges, by the way.
Russell Hedges.
Russell Hedges. He doesn't really have much of a social media presence, but he's a fantastic abstract painter.
Oh, that's great. I'll make sure I check out his works if they're available somewhere online.
Okay, I'll send you a couple of pics too.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. And then my next question, one of my favorite actually. Which is your favorite color and why?
Yes, it does change. I shouldn't ask you the questions, but
my favorite color is yellow, and it has always been yellow, but most people won't guess it's yellow because, I mean, when I was growing up, I was going through the various phases, and I was a goth, and I was always wearing black, so everybody thought my favorite color is black, but it's actually yellow, which is quite the opposite of black if you think about it.
It is. It is. I do periodically change. I fall in and out of love with different colours. I once bought some blue pigment, so it was cobalt blue, and it cost a lot of money, and it was the powder. And this is when I had my business, and I had to do a very serious presentation to a block of flats that I've been working on for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And I started painting with this blue pigment a few days before. And then they called me and said, "Where are you, Jan? You should be here." I said, "Is it today?" And I was so lost in the blue pigment, I forgot about this really important job. So I would say cobalt blue, because it's a bit like, you know, Anuj Kapoor's work, and there's been a lot of controversy about his Black is Black, but one of his pieces had this blue inside it. It was a sort of circular piece, and it's a kind of blue that you could almost dive into. There's no bottom to it. You know what I mean? It's endlessly.
It's immersive.
Yeah, but I hardly ever use it because I'll use it in a winter painting for a night sky.
Makes sense.
And Maxfield Parrish, who's a sort of American painter from quite a long time ago, he used that kind of blue in his skies. It's really stunning.
That sounds amazing. Thank you. Do you paint more when you're happy or when you're unhappy?
I paint every day I can. And everybody knows, especially my poor husband, you know, if you ask me what I'd rather be doing, it should be on my forehead.
I'd rather be painting.
I have this, my husband was travelling a lot through our marriage before he retired. So I would have those days where I'd get up I always used to get up at 5:30.
Oh, wow, that's early.
It was before the phone rings, and you can get a lot of work done by 10:30.
Yeah.
You know, before, because I still had other consultancy jobs while I've been painting full time, and I just used to love those days where the whole day stretched in front of me, and I could paint all day. Maybe not even worry about getting dressed or eating.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah.
That's my dream. That's my dream. But of course, you can't live like that, and it becomes obsessive. So that's no good either, is it?
Yeah, to be fair, you have to find a fine balance between everything.
And don't get me started on the difference between male and female artists, please.
Oh, tell me about it.
No,
It's
because,
quite interesting.
obviously women, those women have not had the same historical importance as men as artists. They haven't had the time, and to this day, my female friends with families and children, and I know quite a lot of younger artists with children. It's really tough for them. Pick up when you can, and you can't. You know, it's the part of the course, I think, for women to fit in everything around their art, rather than everything has to fit in.
Yeah, yeah, I can
No,
imagine.
I think women have difficulty putting their art first. But that's just my opinion. I may be wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of women who put their art first, and good for them.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it is such a tricky balance because art is something so personal, and people naturally find it difficult to put themselves first.
Yeah, they do, especially if they've got children.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Or cats, or
Or
cats,
cats.
or dogs.
Yeah, well, cats just demand the attention and they just take it. They don't ask you.
Yeah.
Okay, so now a bit of a more tricky question. What is your biggest challenge in art?
My biggest challenge in art for the future, do you mean, or just currently?
Just, yeah, currently and also when you create.
My biggest challenge is lack of room, I suppose, because I like painting big. I have a very big mirror, which I think is a real help. So, and it also helps you to see the work differently.
Yeah.
If you hold your work up to a mirror, you can see instantly where you need to make changes. So my biggest challenge is to do these large pieces in quite a small space.
I quite like your innovative approach to it with the mirror. I find that very interesting.
It's very helpful, and I also take photographs a lot, so because most of my paintings start off a completely different colour to what they end up as.
Oh, so you kind of document your process.
Yeah, I do, because sometimes you get this incredible. I can only explain it. Use a word like vibration. And you can use, say, you put like a teal green down and then overlay it with orange. But I don't mean thick impasto paint. I paint with fluids more than, and lots of layers. But in the end, the colours work together.
Yeah.
One backs the other one up. Well, of course, people like Turner and people to this day still paint, don't they, on a terracotta ground. They paint first in terracotta. But I start off with a colour, but after a while I can see where it's going. And it worries me that I do, because of my interior design background, you can't go into a house and just have lots of different colours. And I was very fortunate. I had very beautiful homes that I was able and have a fairly free rein to design for. But sometimes I have to remind myself when I'm painting, it's okay. It doesn't all have to be red. You could put a bit of blue in or something. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I suppose we all have like a inclination more towards certain colors that we kind of are more fond of. I definitely have that.
Yes, and also there's an alchemy involved, because if there's certain paints like burnt sienna, however modern the alchemy of it is, it has a wonderful transparency that just doesn't leave it. You can use it beautifully over any color in the world, and it just enhances. So there's a huge alchemy to painting as well, isn't there, between materials and techniques. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and I can completely understand it. Like, especially at the beginning when I was trying to find the exact medium which will suit my style of painting, I was experimenting with different types of materials and mixing them, and it's just magic.
Yeah, no, isn't it fun to experiment?
Always is, always is. My next question is, who is your favorite artist and why? If you have a favorite artist, that is.
Yeah, I do. I have several favourites. So I suppose the obvious one is Georgia O'Keeffe. You know, she was an amazing woman. You know, she dedicated her life to her art. And I was so lucky because 2 years ago I went to her home and
Oh, wow.
I was in her studio and honestly my eyes filled with tears.
Oh, that's amazing.
She was so ahead of her time and her house was so ahead of its time. It's an adobe house. So of course I have this interest because of the interior design background in architecture. The house was an adobe, but she was one of the first people to open it up and put big windows in it. And she made her own she had her own table made, and it's so simple, so that she lived really, and I love this, because again, I think it's getting down to being true to everything. Everything was really simple in her house, but functional. It was just stunning. So I love her work, because I think she was ahead of her time. You know, in her abstraction. I know people interpret things about her painting which she denied, and maybe, who knows, you know, because art is in the eye of the beholder.
It is indeed. So I suppose it's also about the not just about the artwork that an artist creates, but also their personality that makes them that famous and makes them liked by people.
Yeah, or I mean, lots of artists aren't very likable. They say, don't they? Because
yeah, if you're too obsessed with your art, you always risk that.
Well, really, I think that artists are really special people, because I think of artists as receivers. They're like satellites the whole time. Artists going, oh, look at that! Did you see that? Yeah, that's going on the whole time, isn't it? You know, I go out with my girlfriends in the car, and they're like, stop the car, reverse. It was just really good, you know, whatever. We have to go back, and that's exactly what I'm like.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I'm absolutely the same. I always take pictures of little things that inspire me, whether that's like a shape of a tree or just a small pine cone, or like things are amazing.
Yeah.
Are you influenced by a particular style of painting?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. No, I think I found my own technique eventually, but I have tried. We all do it. We all do a bit of plagiarism as we go along, and we learn techniques from that. So I loved the work of Michael Morgan. He set up the Southwest Academy of Fine Arts, which I'm a member of, and he did these beautiful paintings. They were all his imagination and watercolors, but he was because one thing I love to do is look at another artist's work and go, how did they do that? Oh yeah, I used to know how they did it. So with him, I could see what he did, and he did it all with watercolor, and they're really, really strong paintings. So for a while, yes, it was an homage to him. I painted a bit like him for a bit. But I've always tried to avoid painting houses because of my career with interior design.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to draw straight lines and get the window in the right place and that sort of thing. So, you know, yeah. Anybody else? Anything else that I've tried to do? Oh yeah, I did a mural. From, he was a Cypriot living in London. And he wanted the creation of Adam. You know?
Oh, yeah.
So I've never done anything like that, and I don't actually really enjoy painting people. But so I had a really hard time painting it. But as I did it, and I didn't read any books or anything, I just had, you know, the picture. I realised at the end, some months later, I had taught myself to do dry brushing.
All right. That's
And the
amazing.
other painter that does it so beautifully is Andrew Wyeth. So yeah, most of the painters I like are American for some reason. Stephen Korn, I love Stephen Korn and his colours. With Maxfield Parrish, yeah, Georgia O'Keeffe.
That's
Yeah.
great. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing this. My next question is, do you think that there is an art that's purely decorative? I mean, does it exist?
I think so. I think that about my art, that it's decorative. I think that the years of working with patterns, fabrics, very beautiful fabrics that I worked with, and I used to have things for my clients, sent to Switzerland to be dyed to match exactly the pattern in the fabric, to have all these, these wonderful tassels and things. So yes, I'm trying to think. Yes, I think there's such things decorative art. Yes, I do, and I think a lot of I lived in the Middle East a long time, and of course the art from the Middle East is very beautiful and very decorative.
Oh yeah, yeah, so much color in
And
there.
pattern, and also in India, the beautiful, beautiful work that comes from centuries ago, really, yeah. So
Yeah.
yes,
That's great. It's quite interesting you answer because this is normally a question that quite divides the artists. Some of them are very strong that such type of art does not exist. Some are very strong that it does exist. So yeah, that was a very interesting answer. So thank you. My next question is a bit of a strange one. Are you collecting something?
um, yes, I've got all sorts of things I collect, of course, like all artists. I think I have stones I collect.
That's great.
I have sort of things made of bone. So I find cattle's teeth,
That's
and I
amazing.
found these amazing fish heads, which are just pure cartilage, but hugely sculptural. So yes, so I collect those. I collect plants. Crazy about plants.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love plants, but I never get on well with them.
Oh, you don't? Oh.
Yeah, I have some cacti that, yeah, they don't require too much attention, so these are
No,
fine.
I find them tricky.
Oh, really?
Mm,
Or
I do.
maybe because you're used to caring about plants and not like me just thinking of them only once in a while.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're one of those that don't really like much care. um,
That's true.
yeah, okay. The next one. Do you think you're born or made an artist?
Born.
Born. So you feel like it's a gift that you either have it or not.
I think we all have that creativity within us that, some of us are driven on. Again, these, I saw all these petroglyphs in America of rock paintings and what they've just found in Colombia, that huge wall of,
Yeah,
you could see um, in the caves, is it the Lascaux caves in France, where there's hundreds of handprints, just handprints. So I think it's always been there, man's need to,
that's a great
record.
thought to have. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I love your earrings. Where did you get them from?
From the Tate shop.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they
Just
were from my sister-in-law, but
they're,
yeah, she
they're
got them
so
from the Tate.
cheerful. Just yeah, I love the combination of colors as well.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
Absolutely, love a good earring. um. Okay, let me see what my next question is. Have you ever created a piece of artwork that you were afraid to show?
So often. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a big journey, isn't it? Really, depending on your personality. But for me, yes, I was. It took me a long time to be confident about my art. I don't know why, but that's just the way I am. And I felt like I had to. I was very confident about my business and my design
Yeah.
work, but when I moved to Cornwall and started painting, I didn't feel at all confident. And you have to drive yourself on, and your self-belief. You have to keep going, and then you realize, looking back, how bad your art was.
I do the same sometimes, looking back at like paintings from years and years ago that I was thinking, oh, this is really great, and then you look at it years back and you're like, what was I thinking?
I know, but it's a process, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
process.
yeah. And also like your taste changes throughout the years, and the things that you've liked before are not the same things you like now. So I suppose that's also
Well,
part of it.
actually, I've had this discussion before, so I've thought about this. But the first book I ever bought myself, I still have, despite all my travels around the world. And it's cave paintings in China, and they are really stunning. I suspect most of them are ruined now because we're talking a long time ago
No.
when I bought the book. But and I was painting and drawing red landscapes, and my mother kept saying to me, or to my father, is there something wrong with her? Because she doesn't paint a green landscape, she's painting a red one. I would just think, oh, she's got no idea. Teenagers. So I think it's been there in me, I think it's in us, isn't it? Something drives us on. And what I love is when you see an artist that spent their entire life pretty much staying within their type of painting, but to see the development of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
And as they get really old, that's the other thing, because I went to Hong Kong a lot. Well, I lived in Hong Kong when I was a child, but they've got a fabulous museum there on the harbour. And there's this amazing artist who had gifted all his works over the whole of his life, many of which were made during the time of Mao Zedong, when he wasn't allowed to paint, so it was all hidden. And they were beautiful, started off as quite traditional Chinese paintings, but by the end of his life, they were so modern. He pared everything down to just simple lines and simple colours, and there he was in his 80s or 90s, painting with this tremendous energy of these wonderful, very, very modern works. I can't pronounce his name, unfortunately, but I'll send you the details.
Yeah, please do, as it sounds like a fascinating artist story. And also like I quite often follow the profiles of some local artists from my local artist groups, and like seeing how their works develop through the years is also just really fascinating, because you can recognize the style, but it's somehow different. You can always tell it's the same artist, but the artwork is different, and it's just great following that journey.
Yeah, it is.
What was the first thing that actually gave you reassurance in your art? The first thing that kind of boosted your confidence?
Well, I've always used my art, but I had a business in Sussex, and I had worked on a client's house for a couple of years, and I didn't know it at the time, but her husband was setting up Virgin Atlantic with Richard Branson.
Oh, wow.
And she said to me, and I had done lots of visuals for her, and she said to me, oh, Virgin are doing a new lounge, and they haven't found a design that they like. She said, if we mention your name, would you be prepared? So I was like, wow, yeah.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And then I did. And that was when I realized, because they loved it and they gave me the job, then I knew it was what I had drawn, all my visuals, is what had sold it and sold the idea. And also it gives the client confidence. None of my clients ever came back to me and said, you said you were going to do this and it doesn't look like that. So they knew exactly what they were getting.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. Well done.
I don't want to do it anymore. I want to be free of straight lines, perspectives.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine the freedom
But
that the art that you now create.
yeah, and the deadlines, the deadlines were
Oh yeah.
punishing. It was really, I worked really hard. And I'm so lucky I had that opportunity, and many others similar. But it's really lovely to be able to paint for myself.
That's great to hear. Okay, and what do other people say about your paintings? What are the kind of reactions you get? Maybe messages you get from people, or if you go to exhibitions and you speak with people who see your art, what are the kind of comments that they make?
Well, mostly they comment on the colour and the colours I use, and they comment on they. I'm always being told the work is makes them feel happy. It raises their spirits. So yeah, I don't see. I suppose that my generation we're slightly different in that the Facebook thing and saying, oh, I did this and I'm clever at that, and blah, blah. I'm more modest than that. So it takes me, even to this day sometimes, I might be painting something and I'll say to myself, well, who would want this? Who would anyone want a picture with a couple of birds and, And of course, then I'm really lucky, but I have worked really hard and it's taken a long time to get to this point, but which I'm happy with my work finally. I will say that, but it's taken 20 years.
That's the important thing, that you've reached that point where you're pleased with the work that you're creating, and it's just the best feeling, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But I still will push myself as hard as I can, to paint the best I can.
That's great. Being the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
Another question also related a little bit to feedback we're getting about paintings. How do you respond to criticism of your work?
Well, it's very hurtful. We're all delicate underneath, so I think, this thing of having to be kind. And I get asked a lot. I have friends who send their paintings to me and ask me, what can I do? What do you think? So I always answer positively. I think, but if I get criticism, which I have, and probably will continue to, it does make me question what I'm doing, but then I remind myself that the muscle of self-belief is the most important muscle, and not everybody's going to like your work or appreciate it.
Yeah,
so there's a place for all of us. We don't all have to paint the same, do we? The most important thing is to paint what you feel inside and let it come out as honestly as possible.
That's a very valuable advice.
I have artist friends who are much more higher up the scale than me, more, what's the word? Anyway, whatever the word is. I ask their advice sometimes. And they're very pragmatic, I have quite a lot of male and female friends who are artists. Cornwall's a wonderful place to live. It's full of artists.
That's great.
Every other person is an artist down here. But I have a friend who's a filmmaker. She lived in Germany for 35 years. She's an amazing painter. And if ever I have doubts, she's very critical of me and says, you need to get, believe in what you're doing, and there are no rules in art. So that's the answer, really.
That's great. I do find that, your friends are your best enemies. In a way, they're not afraid to tell you something that may potentially hurt you, but is eventually going to help massively your development.
Exactly. But they know how to do it in a way that, they can kind of not be quite so hurtful.
Oh yeah,
If you know what
absolutely.
I mean. So yeah, so there are people. I will. I'm not very good at listening to people. I think I've always been anti-authority, if I'm honest. I'm not very good at taking orders.
That's good.
And
Maybe that's why your art is so unique.
well, I must say I found all my old school reports, and my art teachers all said if I only listened to what they advised me, I could do much better. So I
I
was
think they
warned.
were wrong.
You know, cooking.
Absolutely. Okay, just a few more questions. One of them is, which is your favorite place in the whole world and why?
Hmm.
It's a tough one.
It is.
I
It
have
is
at
because
least five.
my favorite place in the world.
Or maybe just a place for reflection where you feel at peace.
Oh no, I know, I know. I just love when I went to America. I've been to America a lot and done quite a few road trips. I absolutely love the redwood forests.
Oh wow,
You
that's great.
just stand there and those trees and the beauty of them and they're almost like they've been there so long, some of them, it's absolutely incredible. And yes, that's what I love. But I worry about the bears, that's the only thing. Like typical English person abroad, worrying about wild animals. But
I think the bears worry about us as well.
I think they do, yes. Yeah. So I love any forest anywhere. So forests, the redwood forests are beautiful. One of my sons lives in Brazil,
Yeah.
and I've been a lot to the temperate rainforest, which is unbelievable, very beautiful, but almost overwhelming in the noise it makes because there's a million insects all clicking, and it's like electricity.
Wow.
It's absolutely amazing. And again, you could see a toucan 1 minute and a butterfly the size of a handkerchief, hummingbirds.
Sounds fantastic.
So any forest is my favorite place anywhere.
Yeah, I would much rather go to a forest than the seaside, to be fair. Although I'm like really fascinated by the seaside, but I don't know, there is some sort of a natural peace in the forests and mystery that, yeah, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, I love the forest, and I also love hills, and they're always in my paintings, hills. So yeah,
That's great. And possibly my last question, possibly. Tell me about an artwork of yours that has a very interesting history, kind of a story, backstory, or something like that.
right. This is where I should have read your question. I'd have to think about that. Yeah, I do have one that I all artists do this. You occasionally you have a painting and you think, oh, I'm going to keep that one. I just
Yeah.
like it. It's part of me. So I do have one painting that I've had a long time, and it's of a chameleon together with a very beautiful flower called, what's it called? Passion flower.
Oh, yeah.
With lots of very unusual tendrils and things. And that I did that sort of to remember my childhood, because living in Africa, I had pet chameleons from time to time. They'd stand on my hand and move like this on my hand. And then I'd watch
Wow.
them catch a fly. Yeah, great, fantastic creatures. So that's about it. But most of my paintings, I do them and they go. They're not, that whole idea is to share my own feeling is if you paint from your heart, it's part of you going on a wall, which is why you can be quite hurt by strong criticism because it really is a part of you that you're putting out there, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, of course, of course. It's almost like putting on the wall part of your soul and people judging it.
Yes, it's absolutely that. I know perhaps a lot of people won't agree, but for me, it is that. It's part of me because it's come from my imagination and my experiences and things I love and care about. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense to me, to be fair. Okay,
Thank
thank you so much for this interview. I really, really appreciate it. I think we had such a nice conversation. And yeah, we'll stay in touch and hopefully people will click on the link and have a look at more of your beautiful artworks. Thank you.